Guys, so today we have Emily from Tim Burton's Corpse Bride, and if you've been around for a while, you know just how much I love Emily. She's one of the first characters I recreated when I started out, and she's one of my favorites. So I hope that you guys really enjoy this. Let's get started. I'm first taking a NYX Micro Brow Pencil to outline where her shoulder is cut off, and we're going to use this pencil to outline all of the bones in the arm and the hand as well. I'm kind of feeling for where my own shoulder bone is, and then I'm also using some reference photos of Emily, and I'm not really worrying too much about being super anatomically correct here, just getting the basic shapes of all the bones. So we have the shoulder bone and then one long bone down the top of the arm, and then the lower arm has a bigger bone and then a smaller one on the inside. So this is our basic idea for now, but we can always go back in and modify it later if we need to. So when I did this for the intro, I did not create a nice big wrist bone like this. I kind of had it go in to a super skinny line, which looked kind of funny, but I thought it was going to be covered up and it wasn't. So when I did this one, I wanted to make sure that I had a nice fat wrist bone. Then I'm also lining on the knuckles, and there's going to be 3 points of separation in the finger. So we have one at the bottom, one in the middle, and then one right underneath the nails. With the exception of the thumb, there are only going to be 2 lines. And then this is what we've got for the hand. You can see I added these little dips in between the fingers. I ended up taking those out later, but this is our finished outline. So now we want to fill in everything outside of the bones with a black body paint. Now for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm using a water activated paint, but when I did it for the intro, I used a black alcohol activated FX paint, and I decided to use that instead of the water activated because I knew it wasn't going to really rub off or come off if it ended up raining or rub off on my white dress. And in the end, I was really happy that I did use that paint, but you can definitely get away with using the water activated paint, especially if you use something like Nye's Final Seal to set it in place. So I started filling in all of the black areas, but I quickly realized that I needed to fill in the bones first using the white, because these are both water activated, so they will mix together if they do end up overlapping, which I didn't have to worry about when I used the alcohol activated black paint, since the water doesn't really have an effect on the alcohol activated paints. So just keep that in mind. I'm filling in all the arm and hand bones using this white water activated paint, and apologies that this looks so blown out. I think there was something dirty on my lens that I didn't realize, but I did fix it after this section. So now that I've filled in all the bones with the white, I'm going back in with the black and filling in everything else. And I did switch to a smaller angled brush to fill in the smaller areas and the lines. Then I decided to soften those top corners of the hand bone just because I felt like they were a bit too sharp and square. So I'm going to finish the hand later, but this is what we've got for now. And now we're going to start shading, which you don't have to do if you don't want to or you don't have time. But I'm first going in with a light brown eyeshadow on a fluffy blending brush, and I'm applying that around the inside edges of the bones, focusing the most color around those edges, but also blending this color onto kind of the entire bone, just so it's not super, super white. On the hand, I am blending around those edges, but I'm also blending along those lines that we drew in on the fingers. And even though we didn't paint in all those lines, I'm still going to add the shading around those, and then we'll add the lines later. Next, I'm going to take a little bit darker, warmer toned brown, and this one I'm focusing again around the edges, but this time more toward the ends of the bones, blending that in onto the white just a little bit in some areas to give it some color. Also note here that ideally, you would want to do this shading prior to filling in with all of your black, but I kind of forgot. So we're just trucking along, and we'll just have to re-darken the black once we're done. Next, we're going in with a darker brown eyeshadow, and this time on a smaller, stiffer brush, so that we can get a more precise application. And this one I really am focusing around all the edges, and also you can see here I'm pulling it down onto the bone to create a little bit of texture. So once we've finished all the shading, I'm going back in with my black body paint and darkening all of my black. When I have just a little bit of product left on my brush, I'm going to use this to start adding some more even darker shading to the ends of the bones, especially to this smaller one since it is underneath the other one, there would be more of a shadow. I'm also turning my brush sideways and then stroking it up to get some of that line texture and adding more shading around the outsides of the bone to make it look a bit more dimensional. Then on the bigger ones, I'm placing my brush around the edge and then kind of flicking either up or down to create even more texture and shading. And for this, I want very little product on my brush. So now we're fully finished with all of the arm bones, and again, we're going to finish the hand later. I also forgot to mention I added more shading around that shoulder to add more separation between the bone and the skin. Then to help keep those paints from rubbing off on anything, I'm spraying a couple layers of Nye's Final Seal all over. Now moving on to the face, I've got my brows blocked and I have some full white scaleras in. These are again from Samantha contact lenses. If you want to check them out, all of their links are always listed down below. So we're starting out with a light blue water activated body paint, and I'm applying this just with a foundation brush all over my face, back onto my ears, down onto my neck, wherever is going to show or however much you want to cover. I'm applying this super unevenly and kind of splotchy because I wasn't really aiming to give her a perfect flawless complexion all over. And we're now going in with a white cream makeup to kind of even everything out and just lighten up the color overall. I'm first applying this to kind of the highlight areas of the face, then wiping most of the product off the brush and stippling to blend it out pretty much all over. I'm using a smaller brush to apply this white along that edge of where the skin ends on the shoulder, just so that will really pop out. And then I'm just going to blend out that edge using that same brush that I used to first apply the blue body paint. To set that cream makeup, I'm pressing a very generous amount of Colorless face powder just all over, and then once I've got it applied, I'm taking a powder brush and just brushing away all the excess. Then for all of the contouring and eyeshadow, I'm using just two shades, a bright blue and then a darker kind of navy blue, and I'm starting out with the brighter blue to contour around the face, starting along the cheekbones, blending it up onto the temples and around the forehead, then underneath the lower lip and the nose, and also along the jawline and under the chin. And I want to really blend this up onto the jawline to really soften it, and then I want to take the chin into more of a pointed shape. And then I'm taking it onto the ears as well. We also want to take this down to accentuate all of the contours and shadows that we have on our neck, collarbone, and shoulder. And if yours aren't really visible, you can always look at some reference photos and feel for where your bones are and use that as a guide for where you want to place your shading. And then we also want to add some shading from the back of the neck and shoulders coming forward to create the illusion of a smaller neck. We're going to do that to the arm, and then I also decided to add some contour around the cleavage. This is all kind of soft shading for now, and then when we go in with the darker color, we'll make it a bit more precise. For now, sticking with that brighter blue, I'm taking it onto the eyes, starting around the inner corners, blending into the top of the nose contour and a little bit up onto the brow area. And then for the rest of the nose contour, we want to take it down into a point at the tip. So first I'm defining that contour line, and then once I have that base, I'm blending it down onto the sides of the nose and the nostrils. If you use the glue stick method to block your brows, you'll notice that it takes the eyeshadow differently than your skin. And usually I'll just try to apply a bit more to the blocked area and blend it out to compensate for the difference. Now we're going to go in with that navy blue eyeshadow to define and darken all of our contours. Adding this color over top is also going to help us kind of desaturate that brighter blue and tone it down a little bit. So wherever we've contoured with that brighter blue, we want to take that darker blue and add it to the deepest part of those contours and blend it out. On the left side of the forehead, we're going to smudge it out and blend it down a bit more. That's where we're going to add some of the decaying that she has up there later. And then I'm going in with a smaller brush to add that darker blue to the eyes. We're starting at the outer corner and then blending that up kind of above the crease and then onto the brow area. We're giving this a nice rounded shape, and we're also kind of just blending that onto the rest of the lid. I'm sticking with that same brush to start off the nose contour with that darker shade, and then once I have it applied, I'm going in with the brush I used for the bright blue and blending it out. For those classic Tim Burton brows, I'm going back to the black body paint on a really small angled brush, and I'm first just lining the general line, and then I go back in and thicken and define the shape. Once we've done one brow, we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and don't worry about being too symmetrical with these. You can even place one angled up a little bit higher if you want to. You can play around with it and see what you like. Then for the nostrils, I'm just extending my own up into points, kind of angling them in. You want to make these as thin as you can and kind of as close together as you can. Otherwise, it can start looking kind of like a pig nose. And then I got mine a little too close together there at the top, so I'm just using the white cream makeup to clean that up. And then if you did use that white to clean up around the sides, just be sure to add your blue shadows back in. Now using a small duo fiber brush with the black body paint, we're going to start stippling on some texture where she has decaying on her forehead. So we're just stippling over that area that we shaded down further earlier, and then we're also going to use the same brush to add some of the blue eyeshadows in there. And then I'm using the brush that I first applied the blue body paint with to kind of blend that out and soften the edges and make it a bit more subtle. To create that hole that she has in her cheek, we're still using the black body paint, but we've switched to a smaller detail brush to outline the shape and then fill it in. You can make this bigger or smaller if you want to. Looking back at mine, it was a little bit smaller than I would have liked, but it's okay. So now I'm using the white body paint to add in a few teeth just to the top of that shape, and then while those are drying, I'm going to move up to the eyes. So I'm starting by curling my lashes, and now I'm using a white eyeliner to line the lower waterline, and I'm also going to take that just a little bit below it as well to extend that lower lash line, and then I'm setting that with a matte white eyeshadow. So here you can see the huge difference that makes, and we're just going to do that same thing on the other side. Now that the teeth are dry, we're going to go in with our brush that we had the black body paint on with just the leftover paint that's on there. And we're going to create some shading down onto the teeth, and then we're going to redefine that black line at the top. Again, using the leftover paint that's on our really small detail brush, I'm going to go around and add some shading outside of that hole. And I'm going to leave a little bit of space between the shading and the shape so that there's a highlight around the outside and it looks a bit more dimensional. Now using a small smudge brush and those same two blue eyeshadows, we're going to add those along our new lower lash line. Again, starting with the brighter blue, then moving on to the darker blue. And I'm going to blend this out pretty far because we're going to have eyelashes on and I want it to extend down further than the lashes. Then I didn't want that new lash line to be too defined, so I'm just taking a very little tiny bit of the black body paint on my angled brush and just lining along that very lightly, and then applying mascara to my top lashes only. For For false lashes on the top, I'm using some NYX Wicked Lashes, and I've cut them up so that they're more separated, and I've done the same thing to some Demi Wispies for the bottom. Usually you want to wait till your lash glue is nice and tacky before you apply them, but I'm applying these ones while the glue is still a bit wet so that I have some wiggle room and can kind of move them around if I need to, because I did want to have them out meeting that new lower lash line. And then for the lower lashes, simply place the end at that new outer corner and then line it along your new lash line. So that's going to finish off the eyes. And now moving on to the lips, I decided to go super bright with this. So I'm going in with a hot kind of magenta pink lip liner and lipstick. And I'm just starting off by lining the lips, and then I'm taking a little curve smile line up from the corners of the mouth, and then once I have those how I like them, I'm going to connect them to the top lip. And I also want to overdraw on the top just slightly because Emily has these super luscious beautiful lips, so we want to try and recreate that. Then we're going to fill in those little corners and then line the rest of the lips and fill them in, and then we're just going to top that off using the lipstick. I'm applying it straight from the tube for the main parts of the lips and then switching to a small angled brush to really get into those corners and help define the lines. This is optional, but I applied some of my Colorless face powder over top of the lips to set and mattify them. And then I'm taking a white eyeshadow to bring some of that highlight back to the lips. So I'm applying that to the center and then blending it out. So that's gonna finish up the face makeup, and now we just need to do the rest of the hand. So I'm starting out by redefining those black lines at the knuckles, then lining along all of the rest of those lines on the fingers that we drew out earlier. So once we've done that, we're going to use the black body paint to fill in between our fingers and along the sides to thin them out. I'm also taking this along the sides of the hand, everywhere except for right on the palm. And then I'm going to take my small detail brush to round out all of the corners. Then to add a little bit of shading, I'm just taking my finger and rubbing it along the edges of the body paint to kind of bring it up onto the bone so it doesn't look quite so flat. Then I'm also adding a little bit of shading using the black body paint in between the fingers, again just using my finger to blend it out. Then finally I just slipped on a simple gold band to my ring finger, and that's gonna do it for the makeup. For the bouquet, I put it together myself, and I used all florals that I got from Michael's, sticking to a gray, blue, black theme. And I also decided to pull out all of the greenery because it was just feeling a little bit too lively for me. And then I took a piece of kind of a lacy white fabric and wrapped that around the stems and hot glued it at the back. And then I used some white ribbon and then cut up a strip of chiffon just to add a little something extra. Then for the top, I'm wearing the same one that I wore a few years ago, and don't mind my blank little arm here. But this is the top, and I added it this time onto a little white bustier and then really quickly painted in some of the details using the black alcohol activated paint, and use the same eyeshadows that I used to shade on the arm. If you've got the time, you can always make that look more nice and defined. Then for the wig, I ordered this one from Amazon, and it's like the prettiest blue I've ever seen. It's gorgeous. It's only about $18, and I just checked and it does say it's available with Amazon Prime, which it wasn't when I ordered it. It came from China, but I will have a link down below if you guys are interested. Then for the veil, this is also the one I used a few years ago, but I used some white crinkle chiffon and then just regular chiffon, and then I roughly cut up the edges and added some blue and black acrylic paints like I did for the top of the little corset. I'm just placing that on top of the wig and then using some bobby pins to hold it in place. Then once you've done that, you are now the hauntingly beautiful Emily. So get ready to go out and be complimented because everyone seems to love this look. The only things that I did differently from when I filmed this and filmed the intro was that I painted my entire right arm and hand blue as well as my back. So you might need help with that. And then I also made the wrist bone a little bit more defined. But anyway, I hope that you guys really enjoyed this one. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and share it with your friends. Also check out Samantha Little Photography, who took all the photos and intro footage for this video. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.